All right, thank you for staying with us. You're now on the Climate Chat segment of the Weekend Show. And my name is Zainab Adetola. Just last week, Tuesday, which is July the 16th, the Minister of State for Environment, Dr. Isiaq, gave a warning to newsmen about 22 states that are set to be flooded. And he mentioned that people in these communities should take caution and be proactive in ensuring that they do not get trapped by the flood. This is not the first of such warning we have received this year or in several years that we have had to deal with flooding in Nigeria. We usually have warnings from the Nigeria Emergency Management Agency, NEMA. We usually have from the Nigeria Meteorological Agency and, other relevant agencies who have these conversations about warning Nigerians and giving that alert of potential flooding. But the challenge remains that despite these warnings, we still have to deal with large-scale disaster. We still have to deal with a situation where the environment is thoroughly destroyed and people are affected as a result of flooding. And the question is warning really enough? What does the government need to do beyond just warning Nigerians and asking that we should take caution that flood is coming? And that's why on today's episode of Climate Chat, I'll be having a chat with Lucky Habeng, and he is a climate leader and also researcher that has worked with several global organizations, including the UN and also the Commonwealth, right? And it's important to note that he works at the intersection of environment and climate justice. Good morning, Lucky.
Good morning, Zainab.
In my intro, I mentioned quite a bit about the issue of flooding and how we typically receive warnings, but it doesn't stop anything. We still see the disaster, we still see deaths, we still see properties destroyed, entire communities sacked as a result of flooding, right? Is it a case of people not heeding to the warnings of the government or a case of government not taking steps they should take even after warning some people in these communities?
Well, thank you very much, Zainab. That's an interesting question that you've just asked. Let me first of all say good morning to our viewers, both home and abroad. It's a very, very touching question if I must respond. Is it a case of people not taking heed to the warnings? And I listened to your introduction. I think the 22 state or 21 or 22 state mentioned by the Minister of State, it's almost looking like we're trying to manage the situation. And I would like to draw our attention back to 2022 before COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was one of the most disastrous years ever.
Exactly. That particular year we had 34 out of the 36 states of Nigeria flooded. Then moving to just this year, 2024, we have received different early warning systems from different agencies of interest. You just mentioned NIMET. There is one released by the Nigerian Hydrological Service Agency saying that 31 states are within the high-risk flood zones.
That's out of 36 states?
Out of 36 states.
Wow.
So there is basically no difference between what has happened in 2022 and even what we're going to be experiencing in 2024. And this is a testament to the fact that climate change is here. We, before now, have been saying it's a natural disaster, but the floods that we're experiencing now, research have shown, data have shown that these are human-induced causes of climate change. But to respond back to your question, are people really taking heed? The thing is, in my 4 or 5 years of working in the climate change space as a climate justice research lead, we have seen that there's that conversation that climate change, the context, the conversations, the wordings that are used are probably too difficult for people to digest. And also, I think we are trying to manage the conversation of climate change at a higher level. But the people who are directly impacted by climate change are frontline communities. I'm from Cross River State, and we are largely agriculturally dependent state, you know. But when these things happens, the people who are impacted, who are affected, do not understand what it takes or what is even really happening. They only just come and see water flooding their farmlands and all.
Farmlands. So are we saying in this case that maybe the warnings that governments give do not even get to the people? Is that what we are saying? Do we need to, explore more channels or explore different means of passing across these warnings beyond newspaper publications? And even if these warnings get to the people in these frontline communities, like we have tagged them, would it be enough?
Inclusion is key in the whole of this conversation, and I've always advocated that there is need to move from national-based focus climate change conversation to bringing in sub-national government into this conversation. And I'm happy to see that in the last 2 years, we've seen states bringing up their own climate change policy. We have Adamawa State, there's Kano State, who are brought down just last week. Kaduna State had submitted their own sub-national climate change policies. Now, the thing is, we need to move from having conversations at the national level, like you have mentioned or you have identified, releasing publications at the national level. And then when you go down to see how these communications have been translated to the inclusion and understanding of frontline communities, you hardly see none. And this is where you have to bring in community participation in understanding, sharing ideas. So I've always, in the last 2 years, championed a bottom-up approach to addressing some of these climate change issues that we are seeing, ensuring that those people at the frontline communities, like if you've seen the 32 states that will be affected, over 300 local governments will be impacted.
Yeah, I like that, you mentioned the local government, and I've heard you say again and again that it's a communication problem. So very, quickly, going forward, what must the local government do? What must the state governments do? And what must the federal government do?
A whole lot of capacity building is needed. We need to start moving the huge capacity base that we have at the national level to now translate them to sub-national level, building. But of course, you cannot build this capacity if these people don't see where they fit into these conversations. And because at the end of the day, they are the ones who are mostly impacted. 2022 was the year that I, for once, experienced the impact of flood, because being in Abuja, you see those coming from, even food that are coming from other states of the region to pass through Lokoja, they were all grounded for more than 48 hours. So there is that need for increased awareness. We have awareness, no doubt, but the awareness is not as effective as it ought to be. Effective means that those people who are impacted by this climate change induced flooding, you now get to, because at the end of the day, what we have is, we have conversations with them during the flooding, and after the flooding,
that's the hand. So sustained communication, awareness, and increased pre and post awareness for communities affected by climate change. Well, you've heard from Lucky Abeng. Thank you so much for being our guest on Climate Chat. I told you it was a quick chat, and you've heard it yourself. We need to give increased awareness, to communities affected by this challenge of flooding, but also about climate change in general. Let every Nigerian have the understanding of what climate change means and how they can be preventive and proactive in mitigating the impacts of climate change. And that's how much we can take on this segment of the show this morning.